Hello, friends. This is Laura Johnson, and Lulu would normally be here with us today, but we had an unexpected delay. But we are your hosts for Mindful Sex Ed Back to Basics, and Lulu will be joining us in just a little bit. This is the podcast where we deliver the sex ed you didn't get in high school, and you can join us each week for our deep dives into sexual well-being topics, listener questions, and interviews with experts all across the sexual spectrum. And on this week's episode, we are with one of those experts, Amy Rowan. Amy is known as the Suburban Sexologist and is a certified clinical sexologist, sexual health educator, and sex and intimacy coach. She helps her clients understand their bodies, ignite and reignite the spark, overcome mismatched sex drives, and build sexual confidence and explore and enhance all pleasure possibilities. So, today we are going to learn a bit about her background and a new program that she has called Intimacy Ignite. So, Amy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure. You know how much I love you, Lulu.
Well, thank you. Well, we feel the same about you. We've made so many connections through the Unlocking Intimacy Summit that you had earlier in March, right? Or
Yep.
Yeah, okay, in March. And it's just been awesome getting to know all the different people that were involved in that summit. So thank you so much for connecting us with everyone and including
you're
us.
so welcome. It's always fun when we get, just people in this space, in the sexuality and intimacy space, when we can get a lot of people in the room because just the chemistry, dare I say, and, just all the fun things that pop up. So I certainly have enjoyed seeing all of their names popping up on the podcast, especially over the past few weeks. I'm like, oh, look, there they are. So it's
All right. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a clinical sexologist and a sex and intimacy coach?
Absolutely. So this is, usually the first question that people ask me is, wait, first of all, like, you're a sexologist? What is that? And how did you get into that? And I always say, I feel like I was born to do this. My dad is a retired OBGYN and my mom is a psychologist. And so even back in middle school, my friends would ask me questions, hey, Amy, can you ask your dad this, or can you ask your dad this? And I guess just questions that they maybe weren't comfortable asking their parents or their doctors or whatever. And so I would ask my dad the questions. Of course, he would answer. I would bring the answers back. And so I started to learn a lot of these answers. And I think it just sparked a lot of curiosity and also just normalized a lot of these conversations for me. So I was just like, oh yeah, vagina, like, yeah, vagina. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying the word vagina. And that was sort of the beginning of it for me, I think. And then, I went to college, I got a degree in HR, I joined the corporate world for a little while. And then when I had my first child, I was staying at home. I'm a mom of three. I've got three boys at home. So they're older now. They're 15, 13, and 10. But I was staying home with my son and I started doing intimacy toy parties. So when I found out I could get paid to talk about sex, I was like, that sounds great. And so, and I did that for 13 years, loved it. I mean, it was really just a lot of fun. But my passion in those parties was the teaching aspect of it. That was the part that just really lit me up when I could explain to somebody, like, this is how you find the G-spot, or this is how to have comfortable and fun and safe anal sex. And jaws would drop and then they would say, thank you so much. I never knew that. And that was just kind of electrifying for me. And ultimately, but at a lot of those parties at the end, women would come to me and they'd say, I haven't had sex in 3 years, or I've never experienced an orgasm before. Can you help? And I knew that selling a toy or a product, was maybe a Band-Aid at best. And, certainly lots of wonderful products out there. I'm not knocking them at all, but I knew there was deeper work to be done there. And that's why I went back to school. So I went to Sex Coach University. I finished a 15-month program to become a certified clinical sexologist, and just kind of taken it off from there. So it's so rewarding and it's been so much fun.
That's amazing. And, through all of the different experts that we've had on, it's similar experiences where they feel like they were born to do this. And there's like this inner calling that combines education, trying to undo the taboos about sex. And when you find yourself into that space, I know Lulu and I feel the same. It's really just like it feels like home. It feels like this is the right place to be, and this is, you know, your mission in life. So, so that's really great to hear your journey. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about what sex and intimacy coaching is all about, and why should people, you know, look into sex coaching? Who's going to need it?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't know what is sex and intimacy coaching.
Mhm.
And, I found people come to me sort of for two different reasons. So I have people that come to me because things aren't going well, and they're trying to find a solution to fix it, right? Like, what happened to my desire? I really, really love my partner, but I never want it anymore. Or I'm experiencing vaginismus, or I have trouble experiencing orgasm. So they come to me because there's a problem. Or I also have people that come to me because maybe things are going well, and they're trying to be proactive, but they know it can be better. And so they're looking to enhance. And so, for those people who things aren't going the way that they want them to do, I sort of compare that to going to a doctor, right?
Mhm.
If you're not feeling well, if you're sick, you go to a doctor to help you. Or if your toilet is leaking, you're going to call a plumber. Can you fix it yourself? Perhaps. But it's probably going to take you a lot longer. You're probably going to have a lot of missteps along the way because you don't have the knowledge. You're not trained. You don't have the right tools and resources to get you from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Um, for those people who are proactive, and I love it when people are like, no, things are pretty good, but I just think they can be better. I love it when those people come to me too. And I almost compare that to functional medicine. Like, rather than waiting for something to go wrong, why don't we get ahead of it? And so that's almost like someone who wants to learn how to paint or learn how to play a new instrument. And they may already have some natural talent and drive. They may already know things, pretty well, but you want an expert to come in and really just help you identify your strengths and pull together the right set of resources, activities, and things to help you practice and get better. And that's really what sex and intimacy coaching is. It's sitting here and saying, this is where you are right now, and this is where you want to be in the future. So, and I do like to clarify the difference. I'm not a mental health I'm not a therapist. So if the root of whatever is going on is because of events in the past, then that's when somebody would want to go work with a sex therapist, or work with a therapist first. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that you're not a therapist, but I think there's a stigma that is about therapy that does apply, where we are kind of encouraged to avoid going to therapy. You only do that if something is wrong. You only do that if, and it's thought of like this taboo. Whereas going to the doctor for any type of other physical medical issue is, you know, the same type of thing. Like if you're, you know, if you hurt your leg, you go to the doctor. If you're having struggles with your mind, you go to a therapist. It's just another form of medicine in that sense. And I think sex and intimacy coaching shares that, and it's even a little bit taken a step further because everything around sex is so taboo.
yeah,
Um, so it's so wonderful that there are spaces that you've created where people can feel comfortable to talk about these issues without judgment, without fear, without shame, focusing on, you know, present issues. And I also kind of think, you know, kind of similarly to couples counseling, where it's like, oh, you only go to that if something is wrong. I like that you emphasize, no, um, this is something that you tackle now. Things can be fine, but you might want them to be a bit better, or you might want to explore something differently. And so the goals of sex and intimacy coaching, I think, just make a lot of sense. And it's for everyone. It's not just, you know, if everything is kind of going wrong.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think exactly that. So many people wait until there's something wrong. And
Mhm.
I think therapy, like, I think everyone should go have a therapist. And I wish it was more accessible, and I wish that it was something, and that's a whole discussion on
Mhm.
insurance and all of that. Um but before things are going wrong, being able to address the root cause in the very beginning. And fine tune things before things start to go bad. Or bad, that word, but you know what I mean. So, and yeah, and and I've also found, when people do come to me, they're often so relieved because they've had so many thoughts and questions, and they just don't know what to do with them, and they've never had a place where they feel safe or comfortable being able to ask. And so when they can finally open up and, say, this is what happened in my bedroom last night, is this normal? Is this okay? And the answer is basically unequivocally, as long as it's two enthusiastic consenting partner, two or more, however many consenting partners, yes, it's always okay. It's normal. Yes. But, but just giving people that place where they can finally open up is just, it's such a privilege for me. I always feel honored when people are able to, share sort of their innermost thoughts and desires and be able to give them some guidance and support around those.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because as a culture, we don't really emphasize, well, we definitely don't emphasize mental health, but we also kind of lose education about just general communication. You learn as a little kid, like, this is how you say, be polite, or this is how you, end an argument or whatever. But you don't really learn how to communicate with a partner until you're actually in it. And then all of these different conflicts come up. And then if you don't have great sex education, or you're not talking to other authority figures like parents, it just makes it so much more complicated. So again, like, sex and intimacy coaching is such an important tool to utilize if you feel like you need it, because it's only going to help you navigate these potentially difficult conversations.
Yeah, completely. And communication is really one of the, it's a core skill. I mean, in a relationship period, but certainly when it comes to sex and intimacy. And I think, but there's couples that are deeply in love and may communicate very well about everything, but like, yes, I've had many couples who are like, we're a great team. We raise our children, we communicate effectively with all of that. But when it comes to sex, they still really struggle. And maybe it's one person who's just super reserved, or sometimes it's both, there's so many layers in there, but when they can finally open that up, and when sometimes it's just giving them the language to say, because, and once you give them those tools, and once they practice them, because practice is important with anything, then it just becomes so much easier. And then it just kind of starts to smoothly sail. And that's the best part, is just watching things just kind of even out.
Absolutely. And this kind of, leads into the next question. Why don't you tell us a bit more about the Intimacy Ignite program and who should be taking this course?
Oh, absolutely. Intimacy Ignite this was really born out of my desire to help as many people as possible overcome intimacy challenges, or enhance their intimacy experiences. A lot of times one-on-one coaching can be cost prohibitive for a lot of people. And so what I really wanted to do with this was create a place where individuals and couples can come and they can learn and explore activities and lessons, and a lot of the stuff is what I provide in my one-on-one coaching. But it's sort of in a choose your own adventure format. So they kind of have access to a lot of different things in there, and they can explore in a way that sometimes feels a little bit less, oftentimes, like if I have a couple that'll come to me, I have one person who's really excited to work with me, and I have the other one who is really not, and so this, I think, gives, especially, or even just an individual who they're not completely sure about this, maybe you aren't positive that you want to speak out loud with me or with somebody else about it, but it gives them that ability to learn and grow, and have the activities and explore, and also just get a sense of my teaching style. And it's just a really comprehensive set of tools and resources. What I think makes my program special, and I think different than a lot of other programs out there, is that within the membership, they do, any members have access to live group coaching with me twice a month. So, and so as if you want to just do the activities and the lessons and things on your own, you can do that. But if you're like, okay, I've done this and now I have some questions, you get to hop on one of these calls, or 2 calls a month, and whatever works with your schedule, and live, and I will help provide on the spot coaching with whoever is on those calls. Additionally, I love working with people who really want to learn and grow. And so the people who really dive into the program, when they complete lessons and activities, they have the opportunity to earn a complimentary one-on-one coaching session with me too. So, and that's all part of that membership. And because I don't want people to just sign up for it and forget about it, like this isn't like the gym membership. I really want you to come in and learn and grow,
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And I really like the idea of the group coaching sessions because it builds, or it can build, a sense of community. Like you're not the only person that might be experiencing certain issues. So it kind of, I don't know, I guess like destigmatizes certain aspects of it. So I think that's really great. And then the fact that they can, have the one-on-one coaching with you later on, is also fantastic. So what are some of the common issues around communication for couples that you seen in your practice, and how can the program help people improve their communication skills around sex?
I mean, the biggest communication problem is not is not doing it at all.
Of course.
That's the biggest one. Or I think the other one that, and this is just sort of general relationship communication, but communicating with the intent to persuade. Right? Like I am telling you what I want. I'm trying to get you to do what I want you to do. Right? Versus communicating to problem solve. And, and especially, with busy couples, it is so easy to sweep things under the rug. You've got something's upsetting you. Maybe you start to have the conversation and then, a kid drops a sippy cup. I don't know, whatever. Like there's all these different things that happen. And people just kind of sweep it under the rug. They hope it's going to resolve itself, or maybe they just hope that it'll just go away. And the reality is that rarely works. And then resentment's going to start to build. And then, soon you've got the couple that's ignoring each other in and out of the bedroom. Because one person's feeling, unappreciated, one person's feeling unheard. And then of course, do those people want to have sex with each other? No, they don't, because they're mad at each other. So, and so that's probably, that's really the biggest thing that I see. And, I have I have a whole communication section within Intimacy Ignite, because, a relationship is a relationship. And a lot of times if people are struggling with sex and intimacy, it really is because there's more of a relationship challenge going on there. And so building communication in the very beginning is very, very important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, it's something that you don't learn really until you're in it. And so programs like this can help you figure out the language that you need before any of these issues start. But I also think what you said was important about there might be other underlying relationship issues that could be causing the tension in communication, and not having sex is a symptom of that. I've been watching Vanderpump Rules in the Valley because I love my trash TV, and I'm like, they all need this program. They all need to learn how to talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think people are talking to each other, but they're not listening. And a lot of times, and I have an active listening exercise in there, which is so important because and I think probably everyone's had this experience when you've been in an argument or, something, whether it's a friend or your partner, where you say something and they hear something completely different than what you were trying to say. And that active listening exercise is just, it's very important. And it's something, the more you practice it, I'm going to say something and then you're going to repeat back what you heard. And I think a really good tool, and if it's, sometimes it can be challenging if emotions are high, but if you're saying something and the other person is just getting more and more heated, just say, what did you hear? What do you think, what do you think I said? Because it's probably something different than what your intent was. And then if that can be diffused and discussed, and that's where the practice comes in.
I love that. So since this is, a podcast that deals with foundations about sexual issues and communication. Could you explain a bit more about what it means to actively listen in a conversation?
Yes. I mean, active listening, I mean, think about it. There's so many times when if somebody's talking to you, you're
Mhm.
just listening and waiting to say what you want to say.
Mm,
That's not active listening. So that is, again, you're waiting to make your own point. And I think that that happens, in argument, that happens all the time where you're just having a
mhm.
conversation with somebody's, small talk. Gosh, the small talk conversation is the office party, right? And
Yep.
or one person's blabbering on and on about whatever, and you're just like waiting to like chime in about what you do or what you think, and you're not really listening to that person. So
Mhm.
active listening is really listening to what they have to say, and then asking questions, and consciously interacting with what they have to say.
Mhm.
I think hopefully most people have had an experience where they've had a conversation with somebody that's a really good listener, and you get labeled as a really good listener when you are asking that person questions about themselves.
Mhm.
uh, and rather than talking about yourself, and so active listening is just really being very purposeful, responding to what's being said, and facilitating the conversation forward in a way that's beneficial for both people.
That's perfect. Yeah, I really like that, and thank you for explaining that for our audience in case they weren't sure about that what that term meant. Um, because I, I've been seeing a lot of dating TikToks recently, and that's one of the key things that keeps coming up is that women are going on these dates and men are not asking them questions and just either
Yep.
keep talking or doing what you were explaining before, where they're just waiting to say the next thing. So active listening is a skill that needs to develop over time.
Mhm.
And again, it's something that gets lost along the way until you're in those situations. So again, I think I'm really excited that you have activities related to that because having a great conversation can be a real turn on. Like just
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not only just interesting, but like you feel that your partner really is invested in learning about you, and that's crucial.
Yeah, completely. Well, and there's so many different types of intimacy. People use the word intimacy and sex interchangeably, and
Mhm.
yes, sex can mean intimacy and intimacy can mean sex, but there's emotional intimacy, there's
Mhm.
non-sexual physical intimacy, and there's intellectual intimacy, which is sort of what we're talking about here. And a lot of people just get turned on by really good conversation. And really, there's nothing that's going to make you feel more valued and nurtured and cared for than knowing that your partner is really listening to you and really cares about what you have to say. And I think earlier in a relationship, when you're still getting to know each other, that's a little bit easier. But 20 years down the line,
Mhm.
my husband, we sit down and we talk. He's got, he knows I think this, like he's got a very boring job in my opinion. He loves it. He's passionate about it. And he will tell me all about like every meeting that he had and how this shipment made it to this place or whatever. And you know what? I listen and I care because it's important to him. And I
Mhm.
want him to feel heard and cared for. And his job is very important to him. And therefore it's very important to me too. Also, it, helps with our life too. So there's that.
Yeah.
But but would that be an easy thing for me to be like, no, I really don't want to hear about the shipment today? Yes, correct. And sometimes I don't, but I also just do it because I really love and I know that it's a way that he feels nurtured.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's just kind of the give and take of relationships, finding that compromise and that sweet spot of like, okay, I can't listen to the shipping stuff every day for hours, but like we can talk about it sometimes because I know that that's important to you. That
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so one of the things that you kind of highlight in your practice and on your website is in learning to embrace intimacy without fear. So how can people learn to embrace their intimacy without fear, and what does fearless intimacy look like to you?
I love this question. I love that you asked this question. During my summit, Maya Rose Rogers, she talked about radical intimacy, and
Mm.
it really, really resonated with me. And so I'm actually going to adopt a little bit of her definition because I just thought it was so brilliant. But it's intimacy without fear, radical intimacy. It's sharing the most vulnerable parts of yourself with your partner, the parts that you might rather hide, the parts that maybe bring you shame and guilt. Um, shame and guilt thrives in darkness. And when you actually pull out those pieces of you, those things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily share, and you shine some light on them, it kind of fades away. It can't stand up to the sunlight. Um, so intimacy without fear is just that, being able to share those scary parts of yourself. If there's something that you're really afraid of, or there's something that you're ashamed of, and rather than hiding it, just say to your partner, like, I'm feeling fear because of this. And I want to tell this to you. I want to share this with you because maybe the way I've been behaving, I haven't been talking about it, or I've been shying away or pulling away because of this one thing. But if I tell you about it, and then you can reassure me that this is okay and I love you anyway, then poof, it just disappears,
Yeah.
And it'll look different for different people. An example of that in my own relationship, I don't know, it was probably about 5 years ago, my husband, he shared a fantasy that he had with me. And it was something that he'd been thinking about for a long time. We've been together for a long time, sex had been great. But he just had this particular fantasy that he was nervous to share with me. And because I like to keep some things just for us, I'm not going to share what that was in particular, but I will say that it did initially surprise me. But I went along with it, and it turned out to be a lot of fun. And what happened in that, because he was so nervous to share it with me, but that vulnerability that he showed in that time was so attractive and so sexy. And was that a fantasy of mine? No, it hadn't been at that point. It's never something that I'd really thought about, but it ended up opening up just this door for us to start exploring and sharing other fantasies. And him being vulnerable and sharing things he'd been thinking about gave me permission to start sharing some more things about what I've been thinking about. And it just kind of launched this whole new phase in our relationship of exploration and creativity. And it's been quite fun, and that never would have happened if he hadn't felt comfortable enough to share, that part of himself with me. And and I think it's that type of novelty that keeps things spicy as the years go along. We're celebrating 20 years married this year. So, and thank you. Yeah. And it's just, it's, when you think, okay, we've been together for 15 years, we've kind of done all the things. And then all of a sudden just this door flies open and there's all these new things to explore just because one person was willing to be vulnerable.
That's really lovely. Yeah, I mean, it's being vulnerable is it's so difficult to do, but like you were saying, once you open that door and shed light on something that may have been troubling you, it takes away the power of shame and taboo that kind of keeps it in the back burner and causes you this anguish. And I think, as the person receiving that information, what can they do to make their partner feel comfortable to be vulnerable with them about, whatever fantasy they have or anything, kind of related to their relationship?
I think what's important is to, again, just be open. He came to me and he said, this is something that I'm curious to explore. Are you open to it? And, I said, I'm certainly open to hearing more. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be like an absolute yes, but like, sure, share it with me. Keeping an open mind is really, really important, and just creating that safe space where they can come, to you. And if it had been something that I wasn't into, or that I wasn't into exploring, I think always leading with questions and curiosity is important. What is it about this that you want to try? What is it about this that is interesting to you? I think sometimes we get these knee-jerk reactions where, oh, wait, what? No. And if you can pause on the knee-jerk at least, and maybe just say, tell me more, is this something, and leading, I always love questions. Asking questions is such a great place to just learn, and maybe if it had been something that was a boundary for me, that was something that I didn't want to do, with questions, we could have found a way to explore that in a different way that would have been okay, for
Mm-hmm.
me that also like was in the realm of the fantasy. So, but I think just I always like leaving the door open rather than just a hard no, or maybe this is not today. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable talking about this right now. Why don't we plan on talking about it on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's not closing the door. That's leaving the door open for further conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of crucial, because you might get things to say, no, I don't want to talk about this. Blah, ew, gross. Um, you really have to try to tamper that down because if you react in that way, they're not necessarily going to want to open up to you again about other things. And so, it's shutting down that specific fantasy, which is one thing, but then they may not feel comfortable coming to you about anything regarding their personal lives or concerns they have about your relationship. So, I think like what you were saying, be open, but also be honest with yourself if it's, something that you need to sit with for a bit or need to put aside for a bit. Yeah, I think that's a really great way to create a judgment free zone, so to speak, and create safety in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, it's very important if it's, whatever it is, if it's not okay with you, it's always okay to say no too. But it's the way that you say that no that can be very important, and again, saying it in a way that doesn't create judgment. But okay, I'm not completely sure about this, or maybe this is a no right now.
Mhm.
But another thing, and I feel like we've talked about this before, something that may be a no right now, if you explore it again in a few years, it might have turned into a maybe. So,
Mhm.
so sometimes it's this just isn't the right time for this, or I just need some time to kind of process and marinate on this for a little while, and okay, let's explore this again in a little bit.
Sure. And even, finding some type of compromise, like maybe I can do this part of that fantasy, but maybe not this other part of it, is another, way to kind of find that happy medium of things. But yeah, I think, again, leaving that door ajar or unlocked, if you need to close it, but it's unlocked, eventually, you can come back through. So good news, everyone. Lulu was able to join us for the second half of the interview. So huzzah for that.
Yes.
Um, we missed you, Lulu.
We did.
So, the next question that we have is that seeing as this is May Masturbation Month, how does self pleasure play a role in the program's curriculum? And how can embracing masturbation help one's relationship?
Well, not only is May Masturbation Month, but it is also my birthday month. And is that a coincidence?
Okay.
Not. I
Happy
think.
birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I think what's interesting about masturbation is so many people view it as, well, if they don't view it as a sin, which is a whole other conversation,
Mhm.
but some people view it as just kind of a tool to just like rub one out, and certainly there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like what a lot of people are missing about masturbation is that it's such a beautiful way to really love yourself, to make love to
Mhm.
yourself, to learn about your body and to just explore different types of sensations and, learn how you experience pleasure.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's, as you were saying, like, yeah, you can do like a one and done, but you can also like really make it like this sensual time and light the candles, set the mood,
Mhm.
really use it to
Exactly.
explore your body. Yeah. Lulu, so I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, no, I was saying and have fun with it, right? Because we always think about it almost as a means to an end sometimes,
Yeah.
but good for a sleep aid, good for a long day at work, all of those things. So to be able to embrace that in that space, I think, we got to give more credit to it because it's very helpful and people are shy, even by yourself, you're shy to be thinking about it, but
Mhm.
it's a part of what we have to do. It's self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that, and that I talk about in my program too is, and especially for women, I teach that you are responsible for your own pleasure. And so, for women who are struggling to experience orgasm, a really great place to start is with masturbation. The beautiful thing about masturbation is there's no pressure, right? There's no outside expectations. You're not trying to impress anybody. You're not, there's, sometimes you have to manage your own expectations. But, a big thing that I really recommend is masturbating for pleasure, not masturbating for orgasm. Letting go of that goal setting mindset. Because, the more you try to have an orgasm, the more difficult it is to have an orgasm. And so if you're really just focusing on the pleasurable sensations rather than like trying to get off or trying to have an orgasm, because I think that's where a lot of frustration, comes up when I've been trying, for an hour and it's not happening. And, but were you enjoying like all the sensations along the way? I think if you focus in on the pleasure, then generally speaking, the orgasm may, and I'm pun intended, like come,
No, it's so true.
And let's not forget if our batteries die midway or product abuse products, if that dies midway, then it's still lessened or um unfulfilled.
Yeah. I know. Try to charge your toys ahead of time or have a backup handy just in case, But and I think for men too, I mean, even more so, it's just this like rub one out mentality. And masturbation is such a great place for men they can learn how to last longer. It's a great place for them to be able to practice solo. It's easier to learn how to last longer and things like that. When you're practicing solo versus in the field, right? Because in the field, there's a lot more sensations. There's a lot more things that are going on there. And, for men, if you tend to ejaculate too quickly, this is a good place where they can learn how to identify the point of no return once you know what that feels like. And then you can start practicing in your solo play, backing up from there. And then, mutual masturbation, it's fun. There's nothing really more talking about, vulnerability. There's nothing more intimate and vulnerable than showing your partner how you masturbate and seeing how they do it. What a beautiful way to learn how they really experience pleasure. And you can learn so much in those moments. And again, it's so intimate and vulnerable and just, not to mention just arousing and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
100% agree with that.
But going back to what you were saying, like, yeah, mutual masturbation really is another point of vulnerability that I think people don't necessarily consider, but it's like kind of inherently like, no, we do this privately away from everyone looking at it. But no, I think that is actually an important step to do with your partner, because you're showing them what brings you pleasure. You're showing them your pleasure points. And yeah, it's just a point for learning. I think that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, when they see how you masturbate, they'll learn how to touch you in a different way. Like, I know a lot of women, for example, a lot of women like to masturbate, like stomach down, like rubbing on their clitoris. And that's not typically how they're going to be stimulated with a partner. But when you change that around, they see maybe that's how you enjoy masturbation, then, they can learn how to, flip you over and, try some different things. So, it just opens up a lot of doors. And again, it's part of that ongoing communication that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, all right, our last question for you is, what is one activity that people could start doing tonight with their partner to improve their sex life?
I love this question. This to me, it seems so simple, but put down your phone. Put it down and show some affection without intent. If you're watching TV or if you're playing video games and you're doing your own thing most evenings, I think now everyone has an iPad and a TV in this room and a phone in this room, and everyone's kind of off watching their own things and doing their own things. And so, if you're spending your evenings not interacting with your partner, and then you get into bed and you reach over and you start rubbing and hoping for a little, and you expect them to react positively, you've missed the boat. And so nurturing that connection from morning to night is really, really important. A peck on the lips, a little peck on the lips versus like an affectionate hug, a long kiss, that's going to make a big difference. And it's such a short, easy little thing to do. So, I'm just such a fan of affection, holding hands, genuinely asking the person about their day, listening to their stories about shipping. um, acknowledging your partner when they walk in and out of the room. I have a lot of clients who are like, I come into the room and, my husband doesn't even look up from his phone. I'm like, that doesn't feel good. Like, just, hey, honey, just saying something, recognizing that they're there. All of these tiny little things are what add up to somebody feeling cared for and nurtured. And that's what creates that environment of safety and connection, and ultimately builds, the non-sexual intimacy that can lead to sexual intimacy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that again, it's like just something. What do you think causes that to get lost? Because I'm sure like early in relationships, that's getting excited to see someone whenever they walk in the room and all that. Like, how does that fade over time, do you think?
I think that, again, we all have our own personalized world in our hands at all times. And that world, not only that, has constant notifications that's drawing us back into that. And I think before phones and technology, it was a problem, but I think it's even more so now. And so just truly being conscientious about connecting, and different people like to do different things. My husband and I, we have a regular game night. We love to play games. And, I think it's easy to, take for granted just the person that's with you all the time. And especially with everything else that's going on with jobs and work and kids and stress and everything else. And so it's just something that has to be purposefully nurtured. And, because if you don't, you blink, the kids are gone, and then you're looking at the person across the room from you that you haven't held hands with, and you're like, do I even know you anymore? Or do I like you? I'm not really sure. Like, I want to, but I don't know. Like, you've been staring at your phone for 30 years,
um Lulu, I think you and Mario's relationship kind of demonstrates just like continued communication and affection. And I was wondering, do you have like any advice on that as well?
I mean, so we just try to be intentional, right? So, like, he's off Sunday, Monday. So we know Sunday the kids are home, but Monday, that's for us. We don't answer phones. It's whatever we're doing, we're together. Like, if we just run into the grocery store, we're together, we're putting the phones down, like you said. We're still doing those things, holding hands, still dating each other after 22 years. So a lot of people, they stop dating each other after a while. So you forget that tingling feeling, those butterflies that you had in the beginning. And so we kind of have to go back to that and say, let's date again. Yeah, we're married, but let's date again. Say, you on a date, call me and say, oh, you want to go here? And, the intent of it. Oh, you look nice. That's like, oh, okay, I see you. Did you really notice I did something different? The noticing, right? You notice I changed my hair or I got a new outfit. Oh, it looks great on you. Those things matter still. And sometimes people really forget that. And so I'm always appreciative that he's still, even after all this time, and I blush still, like, okay, you're still doing this. But it keeps it there, so you just appreciate those things. So, people really took that time to think about their partner in that space. I think they'll be a lot more happier in those times, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I really like that you said, continue to still date each other. It's like, it's not that just once you get married, you've caught the person and then all of that ends. It's an ongoing process. So I think both of you kind of speaking to that is really insightful.
Yeah. It's, really, once you get married, like, that's when the work begins, right? So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
not like, congratulations, I got it. Okay, I got the princess. I'm good. Like, no, 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 no. Now I gotta keep the princess.
Absolutely. So Amy, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
I just want to say, everyone who's listening, I want to commend all of you for just taking the time to learn, and explore a topic, mindful sex ed. I told Laura and Lulu this when I first found their podcast. I was like, mindful sex ed. I was like, yes. I was like, these people clearly are like my soulmates. So everyone who's listening, it just speaks volumes, about you, and, that you want to learn and that you want to grow in your relationship with yourself, in your relationship with your partner, if you have one. And, just that, enhancing your sexual pleasure is important to you. So, continue to dive in and learn, all of these wonderful episodes. And there's just so many different things to explore and learn. And I also want to offer all of your listeners $10 off their first month to my Intimacy Ignite program. So you can use the code MSE10 off. So Mindful Sex Ed 10 off. Maybe they can put it in the show notes. And
Yes.
that code will be good until June 15th. So come on in, come check out Intimacy Ignite, come learn. And I'd love to meet you and talk to you and help support you with your intimacy goals too.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we will make sure all of that goes in the show notes. And speaking of which, how can people find your program? We'll have a link there, but just in case, how can people find how to access it?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, which is suburbanintimacy.com, and you'll be able to sign up there. So, and thank you so much, Laura and Lulu, for inviting me here to talk with you guys today. This is just, I always love our conversations. We always have so much fun.
Definitely, definitely. And likewise, again, thank you for the opportunity to engage in the Unlocking Intimacy Summit. Again, we've made so many great connections, including yourself. So thank you so much for being on our show too.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, everyone. So that's all for this episode of Mindful Sex Ed. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer, please email us at luluandlauramsc@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Mindful Sex Ed Pod, and on Instagram at Mindful Sex Ed Podcast, and on our backup account, MSE Podcast. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you are listening. Reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are particularly helpful in getting us out there. And on Spotify, it takes just 2 seconds. Click that 5-star rating and leave a comment about what you liked about the episode. Rating us on Spotify and on other platforms is really going to help us in the rankings and with other opportunities. Sharing is caring and it's free, so please send this episode to a friend. And lastly, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, and goodbye, everyone. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.